For me, this programme is an opportunity to talk to teachers and parents about what goes into the making of picture books, what I think they're for, some of the ways that I prepare them, and the ways that I imagine would be good to use them. I've done lots of books by other people, I've done a number of books of my own, but I think that just for the purpose of this exercise, if we can just look at two, one of which is Clown and one of which is Green Ship. Clown is the story of a toy that's not needed anymore, is thrown away in the dustbin with a lot of other toys, but he has independent life. So he gets out of the dustbin, and the shape of the story is his adventures in trying to find somebody who will help him rescue the other toys. There's obviously quite a lot of exploration at the beginning of any book, particularly if you're doing it yourself. So I try and keep hold of some of these rough drawings and preliminary drawings. I don't keep them all, but it's interesting to go back afterwards for me and see what happened. This is an early rough drawing of Clown, and I made him a little bit less grotesque, and his proportions are a bit different. He's got those little clown's eyes, but he hasn't got a red nose. He hasn't got that sort of glum look that clowns tend to have, you know, because in fact he's the opposite of that kind of clown. He's somebody who's very positive. Having established more or less what the main character looks like, you can't get much further after that without really deciding what the shape of the book is going to be. Now, probably most picture books, they're going to be some multiple of 8 for printing reasons. So it's probably 32 pages, this one is. So what would be natural for me to do would be to start drawing this sort of storyboard of it. It can be quite small. It's what the French call a chemin de fer, which is, you can imagine it being a little railway train with trucks and so on. So this is the half title. This is the title page here. And then the story starts here, either across these pages or just here. And I start off with the toys are being thrown away. That's where we start from, and Clown is included in them. So there's this rather frosty-looking lady. We don't know who she is, whether she's the aunt or the cleaning lady or the grandmother, throwing out the toys. There they are being thrown away. Originally, I had this picture, and this is when I was still thinking that I might write the story. Toys really only come to life when they have children to talk to them, make a fuss of them. And when I'd written that, I thought, do I need to say that? I think what we want, it's about a clown, we should tell the story in mime if possible. So then I began to work out some of the pictures in relation to a sort of storyboard like this. There's a sequence of pictures where the clown actually gets out of the dustbin. In this earlier version, I was wondering how he got out of the dustbin, and the cat walks past, he grabs hold of its tail, he gets pulled out that way. What happens in the final book is he wriggles about until he gets out of it. Wriggle, wriggle, wriggle. And of course, once you've decided that you're not going to have words, if I was writing this, you could say, so he wriggled about until he got himself to fall out of the dustbin. You can't say that. So I suddenly realized, if I wasn't going to have words, that I had to have more pictures. The way you organize the pages makes you want to find out what is happening. I mean, in this one, for instance, where the clown is being threatened by the dog, the skinhead comes in and picks him up, throws him through the air. Then we have this page where he's suspended. It's a key moment in the story, and it's as though we had to wait for next week's instalment to find out what happens. It's that kind of feeling. But in fact, what we can do is to turn the page, and the nature of the storytelling changes again immediately. What I'd like to do is just show you what happens then. I've got my original roughs. This is, first of all, this is one of the skinhead finding him,
and I decided it was better to have 3 pictures of that. And then I use this as a guide. The point of doing it in this way is that I know where everything in the picture is going to go, but I can't see it too well. I'm not actually trying to trace what is happening underneath, because if you do that, the life goes out of it. What you have to do, I think, is to try and draw it as though you were drawing it for the first time, as though you had just thought of it. The lines which I draw, I probably draw quite quickly. But what I'm not showing you here is that I do a lot of stopping and walking about and thinking, is that bit all right? And in fact, any of these pictures would probably have several versions. And this is one of the things that's different in an illustrated book from, say, an animated film or even a strip cartoon, is that you choose a moment. And something you can only do in illustration is to have that split second, as it were, where he's in this difficult situation, and you can keep it. And you don't have to necessarily read the whole story, but you revisit it. You own that moment again for whenever you like and for as long as you like. It was very noticeable, actually, when this book came out, Clown, there were different kinds of reactions. I met 1 or 2 parents who said to me, but it hasn't got any words for us to read. What are we supposed to do with it? With Clown, because there are no words, you have to meet it. You have to know that you've been involved in it. But in fact, it's what you should do with other books as well. You have to talk about whether you've understood it or not. The Green Ship works, again, in a slightly different way. There is no fantasy in this. At least the difference here is that it's about 2 children who go into a garden, which is really a big wood, go through the wood and find this ship, which is actually made out of bushes and trees cut into shape so that it looks like a ship. The titles of books can be quite difficult sometimes, but there was no problem here. It was the Green Ship from the word go. There were problems about what one did about the cover. The cover can be the most difficult bit of any book, because you want to suggest what the story is about without telling the whole story. You can see here there's a storm in the story. There it is, you see a bit of it with lightning. Here we see the ship with lightning and the 2 children who are the main characters. Here's another one where they're up the mast of the ship looking out to sea. In the end, I went for one like this, which there wasn't quite enough suggesting what was going to happen. So finally, you do actually part the jungle, as it were, that they're going through and come upon the ship. So in a sense, this cover is saying the story starts here. The shape of the book, which this storyboard is trying to show, is really the children discovering this ship. And the ship has been made by this lady who we discover later, has lost her husband at sea. And I suppose there are 2 ways of reading the book in a way, because you can read it with the reactions of the adult person, and she is thinking about things that have happened in the past, whereas the children are regarding it as an adventure. It's something that might happen to them in the future. This is an early rough drawing of the ship itself. I realised at the beginning I'd got the wheelhouse in the wrong place and I had to transfer it to the back of the ship where it was much better. But that is the kind of stage set, as it were, around which the story happens. And then it's a question, once again, of picking the right moments and how you're going to tell the story. And in this bit of the story, the climax is a storm. The storm has 2 major stages. First of all, it's the lightning. And there I wanted it to be a double-page spread. It's not a question of bringing it, of having a vignette or having a picture with a frame around it. It's got to take over our vision entirely. It has to have a few words, but the important thing about it is that lightning goes right across the page. And then it settles into, once again, another double-page spread which goes off the edge, which is as stormy as possible with black skies. The way it's applied makes you feel that there's wind blowing through that. There's an enormous quantity of cloud, and you just see the tiny little bit of yellow where the lantern is still shining in the middle of the picture. I feel I know what I'm doing when I'm drawing, whereas colour tends to be more experimental as far as I'm concerned. It adds to the emotion of the scene as well. I think you can often get some extra mood in on the colour. One of their imagined adventures might be, and because it is summer, so it might be a particularly hot day. And the fact that a lot of the pictures are not very defined, because one wants to be able to have the imagination sort of playing over that. I could then get the cast shadows from that strength of sunlight, and I hope that gives you a sort of a sense of something exciting happening. We're inclined to think, when we're thinking about literacy and learning how to read, that you need the pictures so that if it says cat, there you see the word, and so you know what it is, and it helps you to read. And once you've learnt how to handle language to a reasonable degree, then you don't need the pictures any longer. Whereas I think what I feel about picture books is that both of those things go on working together. At the end, the ship, as it were, comes to rest. In the last two spreads, the ship is beginning to grow out. It's going to go turning back into the wild trees that it was originally. And you get two pictures that you can turn the pages and compare them, so that you see that in the final spread, the thing has almost got back to nature. And you see the children becoming teenagers there. You get a little bit of emotional sky, as it were. But the trees are being optimistic. They're growing out. They're doing what nature intends them to do. Whereas in the text it says, and so gradually, year by year, the trees are growing back into their old shape. They are becoming ordinary trees, and soon there will no longer be any way at all of knowing that they were once the green ship. So there's a kind of looking back in the text, whereas the pictures are going forward. And that's one of the things that's interesting about picture books, I think, where you've got words and pictures working together, is that they don't always tell exactly the same story. There can be a tension between them. It always seems to me that there's some kind of a limitation in thinking of reading simply as a skill to be acquired. One can't help thinking of the fact that very small children learn to speak, although actually nobody really teaches them how to speak. They learn to speak because they passionately want to. They must, they have to. And I think there's a comparable experience going on with the book. You want to know about life, and you want to know about it through this. So that using picture books in that way, you not only learn to read, but you learn to read experience as well at the same time. These are the little primers, the first steps in that direction.